What is Dick Cheney up to? Pat Buchanan and Lawrence O'Donnell, MSNBC political analysts. Here's Dick Cheney making the case again that President Obama is making the country less safe. Let's listen.
They campaigned against these policies across the country, and then they came in now and they have tried very hard to undertake actions that I just fundamentally disagree with. On the morning of 9/12, if you will, there was a great deal we didn't know about al-Qaeda. There was a need to embark upon a new strategy with respect to treating this as a strategic threat to the United States. There was the possibility of al-Qaeda terrorists in the midst of one of our own cities with a nuclear weapon or a biological agent. It was a time of great concern, and we put in place some very good policies, and they worked for 8 years.
Classic Cheney. I want to go to Lawrence on this. Strategic threat to the United States. The United States was threatened strategically by this group called al-Qaeda in the way that the Soviet Union threatened us back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Strategic threat, not a danger, a fundamental threat, almost verging on an existential threat to the United States. What is he talking about? What is he talking about when he says they might have a nuclear weapon? Where does he get this stuff from? Is this scare talk or what? I don't know what to make of it.
Well, it is scare talk as far as we know, Chris. He continued in his list of things that they were reacting to in the White House. He included what he called the anthrax attack on the United States, which, as you know, was a couple of envelopes that showed up, one in Washington, one in Florida, that had absolutely nothing to do with al-Qaeda. Nothing to do with al-Qaeda. This is the kind of fog that Cheney has been putting out for a while. A big blur of information that includes these threatening-sounding things. That's the way he linked Saddam Hussein to 9/11. He was constantly doing that in a fog of words that he would throw out in shows like this. And so this was just more of that.
This was for a purpose, to get us to go to war with Iraq. That's why he sold this nuclear threat, this mushroom cloud. He did it again and again, and it sold with the American middle. He got what he wanted, the war he wanted. Why does he keep touting this nuclear threat that no one's been able to find where it was? Where was this nuclear weapon? It wasn't in Baghdad. We can't find it. Right. Where was it? Was it in some balsa wood plane heading our way? Nobody can find it. But it got us into that war. He achieved his goal, and he's still pushing this line. Why, Pat?
Well, I think this is something different. He's talking about a terror threat of a nuclear weapon, and you're right. I've never heard him mention that unless he is talking about, there was a lot of talk about the terrorists getting what's called a dirty bomb, which is not a nuclear bomb. It's a lot of radioactive material. They blow it up, and it radiates an area.
It's not a strategic threat.
It's not a strategic threat to the United States, but we did hear a lot about dirty bombs in those days.
A dirty bomb is not a nuclear explosion.
I know it is not.
It is not. It's a TNT explosion of radioactive materials. It can cause a lot of havoc in a downtown area.
Exactly.
Right. There's no doubt it's a problem. It can ruin a part of a sidewalk. There's no doubt about it. But to use that as a cause for war.
Well, he's not talking about cause for war. He's talking about terror here, Chris. Now, but let me say this. What is Cheney doing? I think Cheney, first, he's defending his record. Secondly, I think he genuinely believes we are threatened now more because of what Obama is doing. He wants to get his case on the record. Bob Schieffer is an outstanding correspondent with a national show. He invited him on because he believes he's a serious man, even if he disagrees with him, and has got something to say. And Cheney's going to say, if I'm the only man in America that believes this, I've got a right to be heard, and I'm going to say it.
Is he betting on red?
Is he betting
Lawrence,
on an attack?
Is he betting on an attack and hoping he can say, I told you so? Is that the strategy here? What are the purposes they're here? Because he's not trying to change policy. If he wanted to change policy, as Mika Brzezinski pointed out this morning on Morning Joe, he'd be talking quietly to this new administration and trying to make his case, perhaps, sotto voce. What do you think? Is that unreasonable that he would have tried to work in private channels to get this done?
Well, it may be unreasonable in his case because he did not just leave office unpopular with the American people. He left office extremely unpopular within the government by professionals within the government. There are people who have known Cheney from his previous jobs in government as defense secretary, and they will tell you, you've heard this, Chris, that this was a different Cheney. This vice president after 9/11 was not the person they used to know and they used to work with. So Cheney doesn't actually carry any real respect in the Obama White House. I don't see how he could have a conversation with Vice President Biden Biden that Biden would take seriously after what has been revealed about what we know about Cheney's misunderstandings of the world. This was the vice president who said we would be greeted as liberators in Iraq. He couldn't have been more wrong about that. Couldn't have been more wrong about weapons of mass destruction, and on and on.
Oh, well, let me pick up on that. Why not sotto voce? Because the Obama White House has said, in effect, you guys, what you did was dead wrong. We're going to repeal it. We don't want any part of it, and we don't need to hear from you.
But does he know something that Barack Obama, the president, doesn't know? I mean, seriously,
yes.
What does he know?
My guess is this. Well, let me speak, all right? My guess is Cheney's got lines into the intelligence community, and a lot of folks in there, and they're telling him this is outrageous.
Well, why don't those people tell their superiors?
Well, David Ignatius, hold it, Lawrence. David Ignatius wrote a column saying morale is in the pits at the CIA. They're probably talking to Cheney. Cheney's saying, I'm going to make this public if I'm the last guy to do it. He doesn't talk to the White House, Chris, because they don't give a hoot what he says, and he knows it. The only outlet he's got is that media, and he's using it well.
Yeah. Pat, we're not going to leave this segment with you lying to the American people, suggesting that the former vice president has information that the CIA will not reveal to the current president. That's insane. That's a ridiculous thing to assert.
Well, it's not a lie if it's true. Is it true? How do you know it's true?
Insane.
Because David Ignatius said, well, let me speak. David Ignatius says the morale is horrible there, and the people those guys would go to
Obama.
Would be Cheney if they go to anybody. I'm not saying they're doing.
You're blaming the superiors?
No, I'm not saying that Cheney's got it. What I'm saying is, if I were a reporter, I would suspect they are talking to him constantly.
Okay, let me suggest an idea I've noticed over the years about Dick Cheney. And I don't buy this argument, Lawrence, that you said he's changed. I've never met anyone who's changed in my life. People are who they are. That's my experience with people. Their character basically stays the same. Now, Cheney's out. I think Cheney doesn't like anybody who thumbs his nose at them, whether it's Saddam Hussein or it's any Democrat in the street. He doesn't like anybody who's on the other side of anything, and that includes Colin Powell. Let's watch what he said here about Cheney, what Cheney said about Colin Powell this week. And this is the guy who led us in a couple of wars. Here's what he says about his colleague, Colin Powell.
Colin Powell said Republicans would be better off if they didn't have Rush Limbaugh out speaking for him. Where do you come down?
Well, if I had to choose in terms of being a Republican, I'd go with Rush Limbaugh, I think. My take on it was Colin had already left the party. I didn't know he was still a Republican.
You know, so you think that he's not a Republican?
I just noted he endorsed the Democratic candidate for president this time, Barack Obama. I assume that that's some indication of his loyalty and his interest.
And you said you'd take Rush Limbaugh over Colin Powell.
I would.
All right.
Politically.
If the definition of the Republican Party, Pat, were loyalty to that guy, it would be a pup tent.
Well, look,
a pup tent. The party's down to 1 in 5, and he wants to shrink it further. Pat, you're laughing. You know he has no constituency
I'm laughing at what you're saying, Chris. Look.
He just threw Colin Powell out of the party.
What he said was Rush is a more loyal Republican than Colin Powell because Rush didn't like McCain and endorsed him, and Colin Powell turned his back on McCain. Not only that, endorsed a guy who got his nomination by trashing the war that Colin Powell sold to the American
Rush
people.
Limbaugh speak for himself. He's hardy enough to do so, Pat. Here he is, Rush Limbaugh today on the radio on Cheney.
Dick Cheney knows that there's really no such thing as a moderate. Dick Cheney is one lone voice in the Republican Party. What motivates Dick Cheney? He's not hot for interns. He has all the money he needs. He's not a torture freak. He don't want to run for political office. Dick Cheney is motivated by love for his country.